Mark Chamberlain's joining us with Captrust, and we're here to talk a little bit about what brought you to early childhood development. I've heard you tell stories before about your upbringing and your mother reading to you. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I literally knew nothing about this topic 7 years ago, and Mary Jane Eisenhower got me involved initially, but I think I was emotionally moved by it because of my first two granddaughters were born, and I watched my daughter go through the struggle of finding daycare for twins. And, she had a good job and everything, but it was more than a house payment. And I just watched the pain on her face that she had to go through to solve the problem. And I can't imagine, she had me to help, but I can't imagine how most folks make it.
So we've talked a little bit through the Strosacker. You and I are both fellows of that group about the science of early childhood development, about the science of your brain developing. Tie that in with what you've learned, with what your family's gone through, about why it was important to you to be involved in this instance.
Well, I shared with you before, I grew up at fairly modest means, but one thing my mom and dad both did was they were avid readers and they loved listening to music. And so my life was always full of, free books from the library and free music on the radio. And it's kind of a lesson that although childcare is expensive, that nurturing of that child's brain from the first negative 100 days to the first 1,000 days breathing, that doesn't cost a lot. That just costs you your time. And everybody's capable of that. And I think that's a basic message that if we start there and we move to better things beyond that, there's no excuse anymore, Chuck, because we know the brain science now. We know it, and there's no excuse not to execute it.
Something you talked about during our Building Blocks breakfast was how people get involved. And how Mary Jane, she put together different folks from all walks of life, and what that means, how that makes things grow.
Yeah, and I was suspicious at first because, we support the community in a lot of ways, non-for-profits, and I was sure there was going to be an ask for something other than my time. But she was a woman of her word, and she asked me to be an advocate, to do what I do best, which is build bridges between people, and by building bridges, I can get stuff done maybe that somebody else can't get done. And that's what I set up on stage today. I feel like my contribution to the cause can be to get other folks like me engaged in the process. Get that private sector involved to assist the public sector, not only financially, but in terms of how to run a business.
Yeah, and that's, we talked about public-private partnerships. It's even more than that. It's different walks of life. It's different experience levels, all coming together to spread the word. I know the light bulb went off for me just when I saw the brain building game.
Oh yeah.
About how each little instance in a child's life means something more further down the road, and how we all play a part.
The thing that stuck out to me during that process, and I was fascinated by the science, but the fact that once the child's brain creates a synapse between the nerve endings, if it's not used, the brain prunes those. So not only are you, by not teaching early, talking, singing, reading, whatever, by not stimulating that synaptical creation, you're not only not building new connections, you're allowing the brain to prune the ones that aren't being used. So that was really impactful for me.
Mark, we really appreciate your perspective. Thank you for being a supporter, and thank you for being here today as part of this Indiana Early Childhood Education Day.
Yes, sir. My pleasure.
You.